Hi, welcome to Thiru Academy. First of all, sorry for not able to continue that Spring Boot microservices series. A long gap came and due to my personal issues and all, I'm not able to continue that. Okay. Spring Boot microservices series, we have left that security and tracking the services using Zipkin. That we'll see later. Okay, in between during this period, I'm not able to continue that series. Now we'll see the simple example Spring Boot RESTful web services simple example. Here we are not using any database also. Just we'll send the request from Postman and we'll store it in a list. Then we'll retrieve the data. Okay. For this, I have created that small Spring Boot project. We can create Spring Boot project through IDE or else starter dependency. Spring Boot initializer start.spring.io. Okay, then here I have already created the project. For that I have taken that Spring web dependency, one dependency, and Lombok dependency. I have taken that. Other than that, nothing I have taken. Okay, only two dependencies, Lombok and web dependency. Lombok dependency, why? Because to avoid the setters and getters. Okay, this is a simple Spring Boot main class. This is that Spring Boot application annotation is included whenever our Spring Boot application is created. Okay, look at that Spring Boot application annotation is equals to see Spring Boot configuration setup will be done automatically, and it done by enable auto configuration. Automatically it will done whenever the project runs. Okay, and component scan, whenever we need to scan packages, right? That scan also it will done by the Spring Boot initializer automatically. Okay, whenever we start that Spring Boot application, we run that Spring Boot application. Okay, then let's go to further controller and service. Here is DAO class book example. By using book, I'm telling you can take any other example. If we take book, we have book ID, name, author who has written that book, for what about, and ISBN number for that book, and description about what it is describing. Okay, I have taken these many fields. If you want, you can take more also. Okay, when it is published like that and all. Okay, in some this I have implemented in DAO package. Okay, in let's change the package name. Yes, this I have implemented in DAO package. In some projects we'll take domain, in some projects we'll take DTO, in some projects we will take like Pojo class, like that. Okay, anything is fine. Whoever developed that project, depends on them, they will implement, they will take the naming like that. Okay, then coming to controller, here I have taken the book controller. It's a class name, controller name. For this class we are for this class I'm annotating as @REST controller and @request mapping. These two annotations I'm including. @REST controller is equals to @controller and response body. Okay, here we don't have any UI, right? That's why it is controller itself is returning the response. Then we need to specify @REST controller annotation. This class acting as controller and as @response body, and whatever the work doing by @response body annotation, that also this class doing. That means @REST controller annotation doing these two annotations work. Okay, at and at, yeah, fine. Here @request mapping. What is the purpose of this request mapping? We need to specify that path, right? For every project some path is available. For that, to specify that path, we need to specify @request mapping and that name. After port number, we need to specify /book. Okay, see, to specify the mapping information. Okay, we need to specify that @request mapping. Fine. Here one more class we have defined is book service. This is the class name we have annotated with @service annotation. This is stereotype annotation. Okay, one more annotation is there in stereotype annotations is four. One is @controller, second is @service, third is @repository, and one more is @component. Instead of @service, we can define @component also here. Okay, anything is fine. One is enough. But we need to provide, we need to follow the naming conventions, right? This is indicating that service layer, right? So for identification, this is service layer. That's why we need to specify @service. Okay. Yes, controller and service we have defined. For this, look at here, book service I have mentioned in property. Okay, same way I am using constructor injection here. Book controller constructor I have defined. In that controller I am passing that book service instance. For service layer we are providing the constructor based dependency injection in simple words. Okay, here I have defined that add book and get all books, get book by ID, update book, delete book. These methods I have defined in controller. We'll see one by one here. @post mapping annotation is useful to store some mapping information in DB or whatever. Here we are using list to store the book information. Okay. Post mapping itself is saying it is a post. Method type is post. Okay, request mapping type is post. Request mapping method equal to request method dot post itself saying that. Okay, we are posting some information in DBRL somewhere else. We are storing some information. Okay, here add book is the method name and we are returning response entity. Okay, here request body, we need to take that book information through postman. Okay, here we are using postman to test our application. Through postman we need to take that book information. In book we need to provide that book ID, name, author, ISBN and description. Come here, book controller. Yes, book service dot onboard new book. We are calling that onboard new book method from controller to service. Okay, let's see onboard new book method. Okay, here we got that book information and book ID. We are setting that automatically. We need to generate ID automatically, right? Whenever we have DB, we go with entity mapping, right? At that moment we used generated value annotation to generate that. Okay, here I am using that random class to generate that ID. Okay, see, book dot set book ID. Okay, new random dot next int of 5 nines I have taken. Below that it will generate that random value automatically and this random value will assign it to book ID, set book ID method we are calling to set that ID value, book ID. Okay, then we are storing that book information in book DB. What is that book DB? This is the list of book. Okay, this is the list name we have taken as book DB, book DB dot add book. Okay, fine. Finally we are returning that all book information with book ID. Okay, fine. See, this is the book controller. We can test this add book method through postman. Okay, see, this is the post information. First we need to run that application, right? I'm restarting that book service. Okay, fine. Here we need to give some book information. Book name Java, author Lara, and ISBN number is some random number I have taken. If you want you can change. Okay, description Java language programming. I have taken these 4 fields. Okay, where is that book EO class? Okay, these 4 fields I have taken. Book ID we are generating automatically. Fine. See, I am sending that post request. See, book ID 1249 and it is returning that complete book object. Okay, post method is working fine. Then add book completed, get all books. We need to check @get mapping annotation we are using for get mapping annotation we need to use for getting that book details for single book, also for all books, all information also. But we need to specify the path for get all books and get book by ID. If we use for both the methods, if we use get mapping annotation only, we will get exception. We'll see now that one also. Okay, for getting one book, I'm specifying that slash search slash book ID we need to pass. Okay, first we'll see get all books, then we'll see get book by ID. Okay, then get mapping up to this fine request mapping @request mapping book. Up to this we need to specify for getting all book objects. Okay, all books information. Yeah, fine, I'm sending request. We have only one book and we are getting that list information, only that book list information. Okay, for getting that, sorry, we need to check that get all books. Here get all books, we are returning that response entity object. In this we are calling that book service dot view all books method, and status code is OK status code we are returning. Okay, here add book, in terms of add book we are returning that 201 status code. Look here, see 201 status code, we are storing that book information in list. In case of, see here we are using created. Okay, it is returning 201. Here in case of get all books we are returning status code OK, that means 200. Okay, fine. Let me see the view all books. Just we are returning that list object. Whatever the books we have in that list, it is returning that in simple. Okay, then fine. For getting single book, okay, slash search slash book ID we need to specify in URI path. Okay, and to read that book ID, see, we need to use @path variable annotation. Here we need to read that book ID, right, to check that book in list for returning that book ID. Okay, we need to take that book ID. For that we need to use @path variable. Here also we are returning that response entity object. Okay, we'll see, we are taking that book ID and then we are calling that book service dot find book by ID. Okay, by passing that book ID information, and finally if it is okay, we need to return that only that book object. Status code we are sending is 200. Okay, status. Okay, let's see the find book by ID method. Here see view book by using book ID. Book ID we have finally. We need to check that book ID information in that list, right? To check that whether book is available or not. Here book DB is the list, okay, which we have specified. Okay, then we are using that stream method, list.stream, to stream that list object, and filtering dot filter book dot get book ID not equal to null. Okay, and book dot get book ID dot equals to this book ID, whatever book ID we have specified. We are specifying to get that book information. Okay, if that is book, this book whatever we have specified, that book ID, and book dot get book ID, whatever we are getting that list, we have list of books, right? In we are specifying that book ID in list. Okay, if those two book IDs are matches, we are finding that book information. Okay, then finally it is returning that optional object. Okay, found book, this is the variable name. Okay, find not equal to null, then we are returning that book object. This is optional book object, right? Then we need to get that normal book object. So found book dot get we need to return. So it is returning that book object. Else just I have added one statement, no book found with ID, book ID, and simple in return null value we are returning here. Let's check that find book by ID method through Postman. We'll test it. Whatever we have 1249 book ID is there. We need to check, right, as search slash book ID. See, it is returning that book, single book. Okay, instead of that wrong book ID I am sending. Here we need to get null. Sorry, here we are getting that internal server error. We need to handle that exception so that we can get that null value. Here we are not handling any exception, right? That's why it is returning that 500 internal server error exception. See, in console we can observe no such element exception, no value present. This information if we handle that exception, it will return, it will print here. If we handle that exception handling, Spring Boot exception handling, Spring Boot, if we handle that exceptions properly, that no value present, this message we need to print here instead of internal server error. Okay. See now, till now we have completed post mapping and get mapping. Let's see what will happen if we specify only get mapping for two methods or more than one method. Okay, I am rerunning that application, I am restarting. Okay, in restarting itself will get exception if we specify same, if we didn't specify specific path for same annotation. Okay, see, illegal state exception, ambiguous mapping, Spring controller not able to identify which get mapping we need to call. That's why we'll get ambiguous mapping. This is one of the most common interview question. What will happen if we specify same mapping for two methods? We need to mention ambiguous mapping exception we will get whenever application is running, whenever we start our application itself. Okay, fine. Put and delete mapping we need to discuss. Until now we have completed post and get. Okay, fine. For put mapping, see, for updating any object we will use put mapping annotation. For updating it, that means we already have that object, we need to get that object and we need to modify. Okay, for that we need to specify object id. Here book id we need to specify whenever we are calling put mapping. Okay, whenever we want to update. Okay, here update book is the method name and it is returning response entity. Here also we need to get that book id, and along with book id will specify in endpoint URI path. Okay, to read that book id we need to specify at that path variable. In same way we need to specify that book object also in body. Okay, to receive that book object we need to use at that request body annotation to get that object. Here we have id and book object. So from here we are calling that update book method from service. Okay, I'm calling that update book. Here we have book ID and book also. By using book ID, we are finding that book object, existing book object. Here, find book by ID. Just now we have discussed. Okay. By using that method, we are retrieving that existing book object, and we are bookdb.index of. We are replacing that old book with new book object here. Okay, bookdb.index of existing book, and instead of existing book object we are replacing with new book object. Okay, then setting to list. List means bookdb.set of bookdb.index of existing book, comma new book. We are replacing that existing book object with new book. Okay, then finally we are setting that here in new book object we don't have that book id, right? For that purpose I am setting that book id for that new book object, and finally we are returning that book object. Yeah, we need to start our application. And one more thing I wanted to show is, in here at the rate book id we have specified, right? This name and this exact path variable of integer book id is there, right? This name, it needs to be match, otherwise we will get exception. Okay, let's see, I will run that application then so that you can understand. So application up and running. We need to first store that book information. Why? Because we don't have DB here. We are using list object. Fine. I'm storing that book object. Yeah, this is a book ID. Fine. It's okay. Then fine. We need to update that book, right? Yeah, fine. For updating that book, we need to use put mapping. We need to modify that path and book ID, and in body we need to specify that book object, right? Book name same whatever we have mentioned previously, same book name, but author we are modifying. See here, Lara Glance. Okay, some remaining details same. I am updating that book. We are getting internal server exception. Why? Because see the console, what exception we are getting. See, Missing path variable exception. Requested URI template. See variable name book ID. For method parameter type integer is not present. It is not identifying. It is looking for this ID only. That means, okay, we need to specify that exact name. See, now we will get that book. We can update book information easily. Okay, we started our application and I am storing that book again. See, book ID was modified and we need to modify this book ID. Yeah, updating book information. Now we have updated book information successfully, right? If you want, we can retrieve that book information. Fine. Get. See, author changed, right? Yes. Finally, delete book. For delete book also, we need to get that book information. Then we need to delete that entire object. Okay. For that, we need to read book ID, right? To read that book ID, we need to use @path variable annotation. As usual, previously we have discussed that one also. Okay. Here I am calling that delete book method of service class, book service class, by and passing book ID parameter, and we are returning that response entity object finally. Okay. See, I'm calling delete book method over here. Here also we are using that find book by ID method to find that book information. Okay, we are getting that this we have discussed, right? The same method we are using. Okay, it is returning that book information and we are removing that book object from list. Okay, see, we need to delete that book, right? Fine. Yes, fine. We need to use delete mapping. Yeah, 200. Okay, but we are not returning anything here for delete book. Void we are returning. That's why we didn't get anything. See, for getting all books, nothing is there. List is empty. We don't have any book object in list. That's why we got empty list. Fine. This is the way we need to use get mapping, post mapping, put mapping and delete mapping. Here 4 mappings we have discussed. This is the way we need to test our string rest basic annotations. Okay, if you really like this video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Sorry for discontinuing Spring Boot microservices series. We will see later. Definitely I will continue later. Thank you.